What do you think when you watch the boat teacher of this funny yellow man in Squarepants living in a pineapple house under the ocean? If you think she is just a normal boat teacher, be ready for the surprise, my friend. She has been running from her dark, mysterious past for years. It finally caught up to her. What is it? Want to know more about the dark past of Mrs. Puff? Then stay with us till the end. In the Bikini Bottom, Mrs. Puff is SpongeBob's boating teacher. All her students have passed except SpongeBob. He always ends up failing. In the No Free Rides episode, fans have found the biggest clue about who Mrs. Puff actually is. As always, SpongeBob fails the test, and Mrs. Puff gets tired of seeing him fail repeatedly. She ends up giving him the license. Remember, he never passed the test. And she begins to imagine what would happen if SpongeBob gets his license. Remember this scene. It will be very important to understand the theory later. She regrets giving him the license and says, "What have I done? Everyone will know I let him slide through school. I'll have to move to a new city and start a new boating school with a new name." No, not again. Hear it again carefully. She says, "No, not again." At this point, it is illegal not to create a conspiracy theory based on this lie. She said, "No, not again." This indicates that Mrs. Puff is from a different town and owns a boating school. Buckle up for the biggest reveal. Mrs. Puff might not even be her real name. If you go through what she said again, you will hear her saying, "Everyone will know that I let him slide through school. Not again." This can be interpreted as she had bad students like SpongeBob in her old boating school. She gave the license to them just like she did to SpongeBob. This might have led to a terrible situation that made her close her boating school and move to a new town to start a new life. During this time, we get a flashback of when she opened up her school. She takes a pledge saying, "With the opening of my new boating school, I pledge that as long as a student is willing to learn, I shall never give up." With this line, it is clear that it is not her first boating school. If you hear her pledge carefully, you can see that she took that pledge because she gave up on students previously. If you consider one of the recent episodes, Lighthouse Louie, there is a scene where SpongeBob has to clear Mrs. Puff's stuff from the lighthouse. There is so much stuff in there, but one of the most important things is a file named Mrs. Puff. We are familiar with teachers having students' files, but why is there a file named after the teacher? Suspicious. But wait, earlier in this video, we learned she is not Mrs. Puff. It is a fake identity she created. So, let's say her fake identity documents are in that file. This is not done yet. After SpongeBob clears the lighthouse, we see something interesting in the next few frames. A newspaper that says deranged boat teacher makes getaway. We get lots of information from this newspaper. It is from Kelp City, which tells that Mrs. Puff is from Kelp City. The caption in the newspaper says that she distracted police authorities with balloon animals. I hope you remember that Kelp City has no free rides. So it is clear that whenever Mrs. Puff commits crimes, she distracts the authorities using balloon animals. If you still need convincing about this, you can clearly see the picture of Mrs. Puff in the newspaper. What more evidence do you need? To confirm that it is Mrs. Puff, you can see that exact picture when she imagined what would happen if she gave the license to SpongeBob. She imagines reporter Fish reporting her, and you can see the picture of her, which is the same as that of the newspaper. From the episode Whatever Happened to SpongeBob, the Bikini Bottom reporters can also work for the Kelp City News. The main reason for our conspiracy is the fish's hair. Yes, you will never see the reporter with hair. Fish has hair only in Mrs. Puff's imagination. That is because she does not imagine him as he is now. She remembers him from years ago when he reported her from Kelp City. She has been running away from her past for years, and this situation with SpongeBob has pushed her to the edge. Don't believe us? Here is more proof of her insanity. You can see Mrs. Puff's nervous breakdowns throughout the series. It is mainly because of SpongeBob. She cared about SpongeBob in the beginning. In later episodes, you can see that she tries to kill SpongeBob. Yes, she tries to kill him to get him out of her life. You see SpongeBob walking towards her, makes her have a nervous breakdown. Hit the brakes, SpongeBob. Watch the tree. Ah, these might look like one of those off moments, but she is still a functioning member of society. She actually gets much more insane than you can imagine. Did you know that some of the episodes she is in don't really happen, like it takes place entirely in her head? If you want to see her absolute insanity, you should switch to the episode Doing Time. In this episode, SpongeBob fails the driving test again, and Mrs. Puff ends up in jail even though it is SpongeBob's fault. SpongeBob tries to bust her out, but you can see that she actually likes being in jail over having to teach SpongeBob. There is another line from that past. "Okay, you can do this, Puff. You can get through this without losing your sanity. But that's a road we don't want to go down again." She has lost her insanity before. It is probably because of her bad students in the old boating school. She seems to have recovered from that, but in this episode, she loses it. You can see her having an absolute mental breakdown in this episode. SpongeBob tries his level best to bust her out before she gets thrown into solitary confinement. First, she sees each wall transforming into a giant laughing SpongeBob's face. Then she gets transported to the beginning of the episode, but SpongeBob goes to jail instead of her. The episode Police Arresting SpongeBob might be going on in her head, or she might have been caught up in the endless loop. This entire episode can be her imagination. She just imagined herself in prison. Wait, there is a reason why we think that way. She was wearing an orange jumpsuit in the entire episode, and she is suddenly in the prison uniform when she gets thrown into jail. She is wearing a prison uniform in her imagination. Why would she do that? In the episode Hall Monitor, the police officer says, "You already did your time," referring to the time Mrs. Puff went to jail. You can see that she is still wearing the uniform, but why? That is because, in her imagination, she thinks of teaching SpongeBob as a prisoner, even though she got out of jail. A few episodes later, when SpongeBob throws a house party, you can see everyone having fun, but she is sitting by herself and talking to an ice sculpture of SpongeBob. Let's go back to the episode Free Ride. You can see a strange picture in Mrs. Puff's house. It is the picture of Mrs. Puff creating an infinite loop. If you think about it, Mrs. Puff thinks her life is an endless loop. The endless loop where SpongeBob takes tests and fails again and again. And in the episode Lighthouse Louie, you can notice that she is a hoarder. She has so many things, and you can see a picture of Mr. Krabs, a hall monitor belt that she gives her students, mean drawings her students give, and surprisingly, she has SpongeBob's diary. But why? Why does a teacher have a student's diary? You can see his last time in the library. This is because Mrs. Puff is a kleptomaniac. She steals things from all the people's houses in the town. Stealing might be her way of coping with every day's insanity. These are the proof that Mrs. Puff has some dark and mysterious past. Do you have any proof that Mrs. Puff has a dark past? Let us know in the comment. Don't forget to like and share the video with your friends. Please subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.